Okay, this is fun.
I don't know. This is Coach Terry, Coach Talking for People. Abraham's presented the topic minimum wage. Minimum wage is a tough one for me in general because I think that there's it's like if you take a healthy creature and you attach sticks all around it, it forces it to grow a certain direction. Then you take the sticks away, it's not going to be well supported because it's been supported by these sticks and been forced to grow in an awkward direction. And that's kind of like the economy. And I see the minimum wage is kind of like the sticks. I don't want to get rid of the minimum wage all of a sudden because I'm concerned that a lot of other factors have sort of set their price points around that, you know? And
How'd
so,
you get rid of
what's that?
Minimum wage is a false floor.
Right.
Go ahead. I jumped in front of the question.
Did
yeah,
you
but
ask,
why
why would you get rid of it, right?
Because do you want me to get all economic
Yeah, you do it. You handle it.
economists on it?
You take this
Okay.
question. You probably do a better job than me.
Labor is an input. It's just the same as any other variable: time, materials, whatever. In that rule, as long as it's employment by will, as long as it's free will employment, you have to sell your time for any more than it's worth to you. And I don't have to pay you any more than it adds to me. That is a an arrangement where there cannot be a bad, abusive relationship. When you put a floor into it, it then coerces the employer to pay more than otherwise would be an acceptable arrangement for both parties. That pushes
So,
up input costs. It then reroutes that investment into more efficient capital, or ratchets up prices, and then you got inflation. So the dollar chases the. It's
Um.
yeah, but we
Okay.
run into a problem, right?
huh?
We run into a problem because, and you can, I can name a lot of places where people don't have that much of an opportunity and jobs. It's not, there aren't many jobs around. You know what I mean? So there are many employers around paying
He,
a
he,
livable wage.
Let me give another example of why it hurts, okay? And this is a slightly different warrant based on the same principle. So here's the problem. Let's say we don't have minimum wage. Now, you know that you have to make certain amounts of money in certain ways to get by in life. And you know that you could probably pull in um, a certain amount just doing fucking random collecting resources with value stuff. You're driving around gathering any resource that can be resold from this being thrown
Scrap
away.
metal.
Scrap metal, shit like that. Like I see people around here do usually illegal immigrants or immigrants that may be arrived here illegally. I don't know, but that's and they're hardworking and they make probably decent money. The good news about it is none of it's taxed, so the government doesn't steal a third of it. Uh, and when you factor that in, well, gosh, they're actually doing not so bad compared to somebody who's got a job and has to pay all these taxes and stuff. Well, they're doing okay. Now, here's the thing: there has to be this reality where someone says, "No, that's too little money for me to take." And the reason is because I can make more just just gathering resources from the environment around me. And that provides a natural minimum wage and it forces individuals to come to terms with the fact that they are selling their time and that their time alternately could be used to generate wealth in other ways. They have to evaluate and make choices. Am I using my time wisely to generate wealth, or am I being underpaid? Now you have to choose instead of just being like, well, I'll default to the bad option because it's the more common option and it requires me to take less risk and it doesn't require me to do anything
not just because it's the most common option, but it might just be the only option.
Unify. No one uh, is responsible to buy your time. No one owes you the purchase of your time for what you deem to be a fair rate. Just like you aren't obligated to purchase anyone else's time.
I agree with that. Do you think though that and I know it's gonna sound like pretty set up type loaded question, but do you think though that the way minimum wage currently is set up is not a sort of it's not at a rate at which it would be able to help people who are struggling to pay the cost of living, so to speak?
The higher it is, the more damage it's going to do.
You're talking about inflation, right?
I'm talking about the minimum wage. What minimum wage prohibits is the transactions where the employer and the potential employee would otherwise have had an agreement. Otherwise, they would have had an arrangement. Now they cannot because it's illegal. So they've got two options. One is the employer can be forced to pay more, which means he's probably going to hire fewer employees or forego it altogether, or they just don't do it. So the person that minimum wage hurts more is the people it's designed to protect.
So the business.
I have never heard that argument made before, believe it or not.
No, it hurts the worker. It hurts the worker who otherwise would have a job. Otherwise, you'd have a job at $7.50 an hour instead of not having a job at $9 an hour.
But then, wouldn't you say that?
Down. That's all. It slows everything down. A business, to the extent that the business has to accommodate government expenses in employing people, so to the extent that you pay somebody over the table, well, now you got to contribute to Social Security, you got to contribute to this, and the government's got all sorts of little special things you got to do because you had the gall to hire somebody. So, that's the reality. Now, the other thing is, it's like, if they have a minimum wage, fine. Let's say they don't have a minimum wage. It's not going to change how much I'm paying people. I'm already paying people above the minimum wage. If the average wage goes down because they took away the minimum wage, because now the bottom's lower, well, then that probably needs to happen, because right now I would guess pay is inflated in large part because there's so much waste going on by the government. It's like, how much of our total actual income is ultimately seized by the government? And it's a considerable amount of it. So if you
50%.
Yeah, if you're like, well, we need a living wage of $15 an hour. Well, you've got a situation where a bunch of government nonsense makes it such that $15 an hour doesn't go a super long distance, because it's actually $7.50 an hour, right? If we could, get rid of some of the nonsense, then it would help. The other thing to remember is, whenever you have a government minimum wage, you have a rule that impacts everything in the economy and has lots of unintended consequences. Let's look at spring or 2000 whatever for about Seattle, where Seattle had two things going concurrently: a living wage law, and they had federal funds for housing subsidies for people. So all the people in subsidized housing, when the living wage law passed, they suddenly got higher wages. It threatened to cost them their free housing, so they cut their hours. So they made the same amount of money, worked fewer hours, still got subsidized housing, still were deemed poor. The only person who suffered was the business, because now they had to pay the same for less work, and they had to fire some people to maintain the same profit margin, which, depending on the nature of the business, may or may not have been pressingly significant, right? If a business is cutting it close, and all of a sudden they have to pay the same amount of money for less work, well, that could be the difference. Put them in a bankruptcy. Now those people have no job.
I think it's kind of sad though, because if you really think about it, it's companies like big companies like Walmart, McDonald's, JCPenney, Macy's, like all those companies, just to name a few, like they can afford it. But in all reality, I think that in all reality, I do agree with you on the fact that they will have to result with Taylor more specifically. Will have to result to cutting employees, and the same thing that Eric's saying when he says they're gonna have to give them less hours for the same amount of pay.
If you
I agree
take
too.
away,
It's not that I don't agree. I agree with you, but I feel like this freedom, businesses might take advantage of this freedom. Business owners might take advantage of it. So when I mean workers might not have the opportunity at a different like shot, like okay, you're not paying me enough, I can just go somewhere else. Some people might not have that opportunity. So I feel like in some communities where this is happening, business owners might take advantage of it and purposely underpay workers in order to profit.
if you take away all the political emotion attached to business or corporations or any other stuff, all it is just a word for generating wealth. It's generating wealth by creating transactions. Ironically, all the example businesses you mentioned that can afford it are also the same ones that are able to serve a product to lower income people. Walmart saves people a ton of money every year over Ralph's. McDonald's, the cheapest way to get 2,000 calories in protein on planet Earth ever. There's all value given back to the community. Ultimately, the principle that's getting broken is free will. A minimum wage law takes away everyone's free will to make that decision for themselves. And it assumes that the worker is too helpless to make his own proper decisions, and it assumes that the business is too greedy to not abuse the helpless worker. It just, you can't apply math to emotion or emotions.
Well, it's not.
You can't make the social dynamic fit the math of what it is.
Understand? It's like I said, I agree with you, but it's. I mean, it's hard. You know what I mean?
Look, the thing is,
it's the factors of who.
I get
Some
it.
people just can't be helped. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
We don't want to see a world where certain isolated nooks of America, some particularly exploitative group of individuals sets up a particularly exploitative workplace environment for people, and one way or the other sort of manipulates them into taking this shitty deal. We don't want that, but that's the exception, okay? The vast majority of business owners are trying, for one reason or another, for FE reasons or status or anything else, to be perceived not only as successful business people, but as good people as well, because they are first and foremost human beings with families and friends and shit. So, I mean, for me, when I make a business decision about whether to hire somebody or whatever, a lot of times it has to do with this. I don't feel like doing that. Let me see if this can fill in. I'm feeling lazy today. And so,
I've met those people, and I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying it's like a very. Is it possible that there is a very tiny percentage of people who try they damnedest and they just cannot make a living?
Yes.
I agree with that.
So can we just like factor that into the idea? Is what I'm saying, because anything is possible, right?
okay.
Can we just factor that possibility in?
But look, fine, I factor it in, and my conclusion about that is, to the extent that we have individuals in our communities who need assistance to support themselves and make it through life, then there are lots of social arrangements that provide those sort of assistances. Families ought to provide those assistance. If you are a hot chick, and you are broke and you're young, then, well, you're going to need to find some older dude to marry you or something. I don't know. Because if you don't want to work and you can't make ends meet, you got that going on. Now, dudes have a little bit fewer options in that area, perhaps, but the point is, there's always some way you can get yourself taken care of one way or another if you are if the relationships at the local level work properly. And if they don't work properly at the local level, then that's where the solvency needs to be. I'm with Abraham on the churches thing. Local churches ought to be responsible for handling members of the community that don't, they don't make it up to what we consider as a group acceptable living standards. To the extent that those individuals are willing to be helped. Most of the time, you can't help homeless people because to do so would require you to use coercion to force them to do shit they don't want to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those problems do happen. That's not a reason not to change the minimum wage. I think my original reason is a pretty decent concern, though, which is I wonder what would happen if you just yanked it away all of a sudden, given that the economy's grown around it the way it has. If it provides some sort of. I mean, if it would be really badly chaotic if suddenly shit changed all of a sudden. I don't know. Taylor, you would know better than I about this, I think.
People got to acclimate and shit.
I think if you yanked it away right now, it would have very little effect. Manufacturing jobs more than anything, but not really. It's low enough right now that it's not a big burden on the economy. Everything else is. If you took away Obamacare, that's a huge burden because now people aren't working a full-time job. They're working 2 30-hour jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Obamacare has been the biggest crushing factor on job growth that I've ever seen.
I mean, it's an absolute nightmare because what does it do? It says we don't have a solution. Here, you deal with it. Businesses dealt with it, right? They said, okay, fine, no more full-time jobs. I mean, you can't force a company to both pay more for health insurance, not fire people, not go bankrupt.
And it's worth pointing out that the 40-hour work week is something that the unions fought a long, long time to get. So workers' rights brought about and destroyed that concept. It's cyclical because it's the wrong way of solving a problem.
Right. It's not an acceptable way of solving the problem at all. I mean, the thing is, the problem itself stems from, like with the healthcare thing, the problem itself stems from intense and overreaching involvement by the government in medical shit. Like, beyond anyone's wildest dreams. I mean, they cannot stop fucking around with medicine. They got their hands in insurance. They got their hands in medical technology. They got rules for every kind of drug that's being made. They got rules for fucking everything. And the reason they're justifying it is because, well, people's lives are at stake. It's healthcare. We have to take the... No.
It's the only industry where you will order a test that costs tens of thousands of dollars without asking how much it costs. I asked my doctor wanted to do an MRI on my ankles, and that's a $20,000 scan.
What the fuck?
I asked him how much it would cost, and he had no idea. He had never been asked that question once before, ever.
Damn.
I'm a cash patient, so I get to see the other end of it, too. How much does it cost to do this? What do you mean, how much does it cost? I mean, I'm a cash patient. How much does it cost for me to have an appointment with the doctor? Well, that depends. On what?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a lot of different factors, sir. You know, and what they end up telling you after you kind of look at them for a little while is, well, the doctor will tell us how much to charge you. And I say, okay, I guess I'll just have to deal with that, huh? But at least then I'm being told, we're not the people who can answer your question about price. You have to talk to the doctor about price. Okay, I accept that answer because it's true. I mean, I don't like it, but I accept it because it's true, so I will wait and go talk to the doctor about price. But the doctor basically says, "Oh, I'll just charge you $40." Did she make it up? I don't know where the price comes from. It's never anything close to what the insurance gets charged. I promise you that. It's not $600. It's for my broken finger that they gave it. It's, oh, just give me $40 because that's how much it's worth. She looked at my finger for 10 minutes. Is it even worth $40? She gave me this little splint, so it is. You know, like my $50 stamp. You know, that's how ridiculous healthcare
Eric.
is. What?
I am not gonna say anything. I'm just letting you know that I'm gonna knock out because I'm feeling sleepy now.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do that pretty soon too. Good night.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't forget to say hi to the Sandman for me.
Need some cheese and shit.
Fucking god.
Can I pick up your cheese slack here?
I'll talk to the flying turtles.
I appreciate that.
I'm sure it's government cheese.
Yeah, well, it's the worst kind. I'm sure it's government cheese was terrible. I'm sure I've never had it, but I think it was terrible.
Cheese. What's wrong with government cheese?
Do they still
Probably
have
smells like Parmesan and tastes like that spray can cheese.
Tastes like inefficiency.
Yeah.
Smells like corruption.
It's
Tastes
like
like inefficiency. Government cheese.